as it stimulated the further and rapid development of the latent tendencies of the superior Chinese stocks. From Honan to Shanxi, the potentials of an advanced civilization were coming to fruit. Metalworking and all the arts of manufacture date from these days. The similarities between certain of the early Chinese and Mesopotamian methods of time reckoning, astronomy, and governmental administration were due to the commercial relationships between these two remotely situated centers. Chinese merchants traveled the overland routes through Turkestan to Mesopotamia even in the days of the Sumerians. Nor was this exchange one-sided. The valley of the Euphrates benefited considerably thereby, as did the peoples of the Gangetic Plain. But the climatic changes and the nomadic invasions of the third millennium before Christ greatly reduced the volume of trade passing over the caravan trails of Central Asia. 7. The Andites enter China. About 15,000 years ago, the Andites, in considerable numbers, were traversing the pass of Didao and spreading out over the upper valley of the Yellow River among the Chinese settlements of Gansu. Presently they penetrated eastward to Honan, where the most progressive settlements were situated. This infiltration from the west was about half Andinite and half Andite. The northern centers of culture along the Yellow River had always been more progressive than the southern settlements on the Yangtze. Within a few thousand years after the arrival of even the small numbers of these superior mortals, the settlements along the Yellow River had forged ahead of the Yangtze villages and had achieved an advanced position over their brethren in the south, which has ever since been maintained. It was not that there were so many of the Andites, nor that their culture was so superior, but amalgamation with them produced a more versatile stock. The northern Chinese received just enough of the Andite strain to mildly stimulate their innately able minds, but not enough to fire them with the restless, exploratory curiosity so characteristic of the northern white races. This more limited infusion of Andite inheritance was less disturbing to the innate stability of the Sanghic type. The later waves of Andites brought with them certain of the cultural advances of Mesopotamia, and this is especially true of the last waves of migration from the west. They greatly improved the economic and educational practices of the northern Chinese, and while their influence upon the religious culture of the Yellow race was short-lived, their later descendants contributed much to a subsequent spiritual awakening. But the Andite traditions of the beauty of Eden and Dalmatia did influence Chinese traditions. Early Chinese legends place the land of the gods in the west. The Chinese people did not begin to build cities and engage in manufacture until after 10,000 BC, subsequent to the climatic changes in Turkestan and the arrival of the later Andite immigrants. The infusion of this new blood did not add so much to the civilization of the yellow man as it stimulated the further and rapid development of the latent tendencies of the superior Chinese stocks. From Honan to Shanxi, the potentials of an advanced civilization were coming to fruit. Metalworking and all the arts of manufacture date from these days. The similarities between certain of the early Chinese and Mesopotamian methods of time reckoning, astronomy, and governmental administration were due to the commercial relationships between these two remotely situated centers. Chinese merchants traveled the overland routes through Turkestan to Mesopotamia even in the days of the Sumerians. Nor was this exchange one-sided. The valley of the Euphrates benefited considerably thereby, as did the peoples of the Gangetic Plain. But the climatic changes and the nomadic invasions of the third millennium before Christ greatly reduced the volume of trade passing over the caravan trails of Central Asia. 8. Later Chinese civilization. While the red man suffered from too much warfare, it is not altogether amiss to say that the development of statehood among the Chinese was delayed by the thoroughness of their conquest of Asia. They had a great potential of racial solidarity, but it failed properly to develop because the continuous driving stimulus of the ever-present danger of external aggression was lacking. With the completion of the conquest of Eastern Asia, the ancient military state gradually disintegrated. Past wars were forgotten. Of the epic struggle with the red race, there persisted only the hazy tradition of an ancient contest with the archer peoples. The Chinese early turned to agricultural pursuits, which contributed further to their pacific tendencies, while a population well below the land-man ratio for agriculture still further contributed to the growing peacefulness of the country. Consciousness of past achievements somewhat diminished in the present, the conservatism of an overwhelmingly agricultural people, and a well-developed family life equaled the birth of ancestor veneration, culminating in the custom of so honoring the men of the past as to border on worship. A very similar attitude prevailed among the white races in Europe for some 500 years following the disruption of Greco-Roman civilization. The belief in and worship of the one truth, as taught by Singleton, never entirely died out. But as time passed, the search for new and higher truth became overshadowed by a growing tendency to venerate that which was already established. Slowly the genius of the yellow race became diverted from the pursuit of the unknown to the preservation of the known, and this is the reason for the stagnation of what had been the world's most rapidly progressing civilization. Between 4000 and 500 BC, the political reunification of the Yellow race was consummated, but the cultural union of the Yangtze and Yellow River centers had already been effected. This political reunification of the later tribal groups was not without conflict, but the societal opinion of war remained low. Ancestor worship, increasing dialects, and no call for military action for thousands upon thousands of years had rendered this people ultra-peaceful. Despite failure to fulfill the promise of an early development of advanced statehood, the Yellow race did progressively move forward in the realization of the arts of civilization, especially in the realms of agriculture and horticulture. The hydraulic problems faced by the agriculturists in Shenxi and Honan demanded group cooperation for solution. Such irrigation and soil conservation difficulties contributed in no small measure to the development of interdependence, with the consequent promotion of peace among farming groups. Soon developments in writing, together with the establishment of schools, contributed to the dissemination of knowledge on a previously unequaled scale. But the cumbersome nature of the ideographic writing system placed a numerical limit upon the learned classes, despite the early appearance of printing. And above all else, the process of social standardization and religio-philosophic dogmatization continued apace. The religious development of ancestor veneration became further complicated by a flood of superstitions involving nature worship, but lingering vestiges of a real concept of God remained preserved in the imperial worship of Shang-Ti. The great weakness of ancestor veneration is that it promotes a backward-looking philosophy. However wise it may be to glean wisdom from the past, it is folly to regard the past as the exclusive source of truth. Truth is relative and expanding. It lives always in the present, achieving new expression in each generation of men, even in each human life. The great strength in a veneration of ancestry is the value that such an attitude places upon the family. The amazing stability and persistence of Chinese culture is a consequence of the paramount position accorded the family, for civilization is directly dependent on the effective functioning of the family, and in China the family attained a social importance, even a religious significance, approached by few other peoples. The filial devotion and family loyalty exacted by the growing cult of ancestor worship ensured the building up of superior family relationships and of enduring family groups, all of which facilitated the following factors in the preservation of civilization. 1. Conservation of property and wealth. 2. Pooling of the experience of more than one generation. 3. Efficient education of children in the arts and sciences of the past. 4. Development of a strong sense of duty, the enhancement of morality, and the augmentation of ethical sensitivity. The formative period of Chinese civilization, opening with the coming of the Andites, continues on down to the great ethical